Hey. Oh, let's give it up. How's everybody doing tonight? Well, thank you for coming. The audience will continue to grow, but good evening. On behalf of KPCC and the LA Times, welcome to the Aratani Theater for this evening's DA debate. My name's John Cohn. I oversee live programming and events for KPCC and LAist.
And I'm Hillary Manning, the Vice President for Communications at the LA Times. And we're thrilled to be co-hosting this evening's program with KPCC. It's the first in our Local Matters series. And during this election year, we plan to host a few more events, so keep an eye and an ear out for those. And you can go ahead and mark your calendar because coming up on April 18th and 19th, we'll have our 25th annual LA Times Festival of Books at USC.
Yes, join me in going there. Yeah, let's give it up for the LA Times Festival of Books. KPCC will also be producing a range of events, including our recently announced Public Radio Palooza. It's a year-long celebration and live event series featuring a range of public radio shows and hosts. More of that in events, kpcc.org. All of this, in addition to the ongoing election coverage by both the LA Times, KPCC, and also collectively. And just a quick reminder, the California primary is coming up on March 3rd.
Our sincere thanks to those of you who are LA Times subscribers or KPCC members, and a special thank you to those of you who are KPCC members and LA Times subscribers. Your support helps fund our journalism, and it makes it possible for us to host community events like this one.
So tonight's program will be aired live on 89.3 FM KPCC, live video streamed kpcc.org, Facebook Live, YouTube. We've made it impossible to miss this event. We do ask that you be respectful of the folks on stage and your fellow attendees in the audience. So please take a second now to silence or turn off your devices. Photos are okay, but please no flash and no audio or video recording. We have that more than covered. If you're on social, we invite you to engage with us using the hashtag #DADebate.
Thank you again for joining us tonight for this important discussion. It's our pleasure now to welcome your hosts for the evening and the moderators for the DA candidates debate, LA Times' Robert Green.
And KPCC's Libby Denkman.
Thank you. Well, welcome everybody to the DA candidates debate. I'm Libby Denkman, politics reporter at KPCC.
And I'm Robert Green, an editorial writer at the Los Angeles Times. Thank you so much for coming out for what should be an enlightening and lively 90 minutes.
So we want to let you know a little bit about how tonight is going to work. As John mentioned, it's going to be broadcast live on KPCC. The broadcast will start in about 3.5 minutes here. So we are going to go straight through, starting at about 7:06, straight through to 8:30, no breaks. We're really going to try to get as many questions in as possible tonight.
Here's how the format for tonight's debate will work. One of us will ask a question of one of the candidates who will have 90 seconds to respond. And then each of the other two candidates will have 60 seconds for a response. And then we're going to do a 3 to 5 minute discussion among all three candidates. Then we'll move to the next question, starting off with the next candidate in line. The order was determined through random selection.
And I just want to say a word about your role. I know the audience is still coming in. We have a security line out there, but we do have a live broadcast to start, so people will be trickling in as we continue. Robert and I will introduce ourselves again for the live broadcast. You'll have to sit through that again. And we'll have the candidates come on stage. At that point, feel free to applaud, get it all out of your system, anything you want to do as the candidates are entering. We will jump right into our questions, and we just want to make a word because we know that this is a race that has evoked strong feelings and that there are a lot of strong emotions in the audience, but I hope that you share our goal that we have an atmosphere of courtesy and respect, and that we can get to as many questions as possible tonight, and we just want to stay on track with that. So no heckling, no booing, and we request that you refrain from applauding or cheering during the debate, because the more that happens, the fewer questions we can get to. And thank you in advance for your cooperation. We have got a minute and a half here until the live broadcast starts. So until you hear that live broadcast starting, and I will be kicking it off, you're going to hear the NPR feed coming through. That's what you hear on KPCC right now. And I believe it's going to be Nick Roman doing the news tonight. So get comfortable, and thank you so much for being here. We'll start in just a minute.
Thank you.
As possible and still be very careful.
Still, Dr. Nancy Knight from the CDC says they're discouraged from leaving.
They are sitting in the middle of a military base. Any discussion around departure would be just that, would be a discussion.
The CDC says passengers so far have been happy to stay and be tested before flying back to their homes. Health officials say the risk of coronavirus spreading in the U.S. is very low. I'm Caroline Champlin in Moreno Valley.
By 3 votes, state lawmakers today failed to pass a fix for California's housing crunch. That bill would have allowed more small apartment buildings close to transit centers or in neighborhoods zoned for single-family homes. The bill could get
About 25
another vote
seconds
tomorrow,
here
has
until
to
the live
pass by
broadcast
Friday,
starts.
or it's dead. The DA debate is next. It's 7:06.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include LifeLock, reminding consumers that only 1 in 5 victims of identity theft discovered their theft through a bank or credit card company. Learn more at lifelock.com/NPR.
Good evening from the Aratani Theater in downtown Los Angeles. Welcome to tonight's debate among the candidates for Los Angeles County District Attorney. KPCC and the Los Angeles Times have teamed up to host this debate. I'm Libby Dankman, politics reporter with KPCC.
And I'm Robert Green, editorial writer for the Los Angeles Times. And now, let's please welcome to the stage the 3 candidates. Incumbent DA Jackie Lacey, George Gascon, and Rachel Rossi. We're looking forward to a lively 90-minute discussion of the issues facing the largest prosecutor's office in the United States. First, let's meet the candidates. DA Jackie Lacey is a career prosecutor. She joined the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office as a line prosecutor in 1986, and over the years rose through the ranks. Along the way, she headed the Major Crimes and Major Narcotics Units and the Central Operations Bureau. In 2011, she was elevated to Chief Deputy DA, the number 2 position in the department. She was elected DA in 2012 and re-elected in 2016.
George Gascon is an Army veteran and a career police officer. Was a career police officer before becoming a prosecutor. He joined the LAPD in 1978, and outside of a 5-year hiatus as a car salesman, he spent more than 20 years on the force, rising to assistant chief. In 2006, he became police chief of Mesa, Arizona, and in 2009, he became chief of police in San Francisco. In 2011, he was appointed San Francisco's district attorney. Gascon was elected to the post later that year and was re-elected in 2015. He stepped down last fall to run for DA here in Los Angeles.
Rachel Rossi began her career in 2011 in the office of the LA County Public Defender's Office. She worked there for 3 years, then joined the LA office of the Federal Public Defender. In 2017, she was detailed to the office of Senator Dick Durbin to work on criminal justice reform on the Senate Judiciary Committee. In February of last year, she became majority counsel to the House of Representatives Subcommittee on Crime, Terrorism, and Homeland Security. She resigned last September to run for DA.
Now, a few words about the format for tonight's debate. At the start of each round, one of us will ask a question of a candidate who will have 90 seconds to respond. Then the other 2 candidates will each have 60 seconds for their response. After that, we will have a 3 to 5 minute discussion among all 3 candidates, and then we'll move on to the next question, starting off with the next candidate in line.
We've determined through a random drawing the order in which the candidates will be asked questions. We will start with Rachel Rossi. George Gascon will be next, and Jackie Lacey will be third. One last thing, in the weeks leading up to the debate, we asked people in the community to suggest questions we could ask the candidates. We got a lot of them, so thank you. They've informed many of the questions we will be asking this evening.
So let's get started. First question is to Rachel Rossi. We got a lot of questions about homelessness, which, as you know, is a huge problem in Los Angeles County. You've said it should never be illegal to be homeless, and that there are crimes associated with homelessness that you would never prosecute. Can you be more specific about what you would and what you wouldn't prosecute when it comes to homelessness?
So what we've seen, first of all, in our LA County jails is a 41% increase in our homeless brothers and sisters circling in and out of our jails. That means that we are over-criminalizing and over-arresting and over-penalizing our homeless community. Some of the offenses that should never be prosecuted include sleeping on the sidewalk. It should never be a crime to sleep on the sidewalk. Urinating in public, having to relieve yourself, should never be prosecuted. The district attorney has the responsibility as the gatekeeper for justice to make the decision on when crimes should be prosecuted and when they should not be prosecuted. And one of the things that I would do as district attorney is begin to scale back the criminalization of poverty and start to look at ways that we can hold people accountable who are causing homelessness. So I would develop a task force to investigate the big developers and the corporate landlords who conduct illegal practices to increase the rents and to evict people. As district attorney, we need a justice system that works for all people. Instead of criminalizing the homeless, let's stop homelessness. Let's fight homelessness.
Thank you, Ms. Rossi. And Mr. Gascon, you have 60 seconds to respond.
Yes, one of the problems that we have today, and recently the New York Times published a statement that was made by someone here from LA, actually, the head of the homeless work here, that indicated that one of the biggest way, or one of the most certain ways to assure that you're likely to be homeless is to be arrested. The criminal justice system actually has caused homelessness, and we have to be extremely careful to make sure that we do not use the criminal justice system, A, to criminalize poor people, or to criminalize people because they simply cannot afford a house, because they're not homeless, by the way, they're houseless. And we have to make sure that we understand the ripple impact that we can have in the criminal justice system when we interfere and we criminalize people that are actually simply poor or maybe suffering from mental health or some other problems that they should be actually provided services and not a jail bed.
And thank you. That is 60 seconds. DA Lacey, you have 60 seconds.
Yes, my first response is to say I absolutely agree that we shouldn't criminalize people who are homeless just for being homeless. And a lot of the things that Rachel Rossi talked about with regard to urination and camping, the LA County District Attorney's Office in LA City doesn't prosecute those kinds of cases. That's a city attorney, city prosecutor function. Nevertheless, in unincorporated areas, 2 years ago, we started a pre-filing diversion program in the DA's office where, in fact, we divert a lot of those folks out of the system. We're not wasting court time, and we're not trying to make it a crime to be homeless. A lot of people that are in our jail systems are in for much more serious crimes. And I hope to talk later about what we're doing to actually get people permanent housing who come out of the jails.
Thank you. And we have an open discussion opportunity now. Ms. Rossi, can you respond to what DA Lacey just said? She's saying that, you know, when you talk about sleeping, urination, that the LA County District Attorney's Office is not responsible for prosecuting that.
I would say first we have to look at the numbers. We don't know specifically the misdemeanors that are being prosecuted by the District Attorney's Office because we don't have that data. We don't have that transparency. We don't have that publicly available. But what we do know is that the District Attorney's Office prosecutes about 91,000 misdemeanors a year, and collectively, All of the 10 city attorney's offices in the county prosecute about a little over 8,000 misdemeanors a year. So the district attorney has some part in this because the district attorney is prosecuting misdemeanors.
I would just say that.
Go ahead, DA Lacey.
Oh, I'm sorry. I would just say that actually I think that data is available in several different sources. That with regard to the crimes that you're talking about, those are not crimes that most of the time the district attorney's office is not involved in prosecuting. We have 10 city prosecutors, Long Beach, Torrance, all these other places that do that. But I think the big issue that I disagree with, it's not that arresting someone who stays overnight in jail for one of those crimes, that's what's causing homelessness. What's causing the homelessness is when people get out, they've often lost their jobs, they have a mental health issue, a substance abuse. So as DA, I have made it a priority to really look at the mental health problem and figure out how we can get people housing. So through the Office of Diversion and Reentry, we've actually put people, more than 3,000 people, in permanent supportive housing since I've been DA in the last couple of years. And that's how you get people to quit being homeless. We've also dismissed a bunch of these nuisance tickets that had gone to warrant, that had kept people from getting jobs and housing and benefits. So your DA's office is doing that. It's a great idea. I've heard of it before, and it's because we are doing it. We are actively involved in making sure that we don't perpetuate the cycle of homelessness by making it harder for people to get back on the
And
street.
Mr. Gascon, can you jump in here, because you were DA of San Francisco, obviously another city that has a huge homelessness problem. What did you do in San Francisco, and what specifically would you change in Los Angeles?
Yes, well, first of all, let's take LA first, and then we're going to do San Francisco. The RAND Corporation just recently did a study of the prison population or the jail population in LA County, and out of about 17,000 people, there were 6,000 they were deemed to be qualified to be diverted for mental health issues, and they're sitting in jail, and we know that they're going to come out, and they will, as Ms. Lacey indicated very accurately, we're not dealing with their issues. They're certainly not finding them a roof when we put them in jail. So those 6,000 people that are coming in and out are clearly people that should not be in our jails. What we did in San Francisco, first of all, San Francisco had a very robust mental health court, was one of the first in the country, way before my time. But in the team, we had a significant team in our office that work in this work. Now, we continue to have the same problems that every other major urban center around the country has. And that was that a significant portion of our jail was also people that are mentally ill. I fought the building of a jail in San Francisco because I very clearly stated that we did not need another jail, that we needed more mental health capacity. So rather than continue to send people in the jail, even though our jail had plenty of capacity, by the way, because since I was DA, we run somewhere between 30 and 40% vacancy, even though our crime continued to go down. But we actually enlisted a group of experts to come in and give us a blueprint of what the intersection between the criminal justice system and mental health should be. And that report actually was a report that has been published, has been distributed in many places. That kind of work will be the work that I would do if I were to be elected DA, is how do we create intersections, how do we divert people, not post-trial, not by coercing people to plead, but actually pre-trial diversion, early diversion, getting people, quite frankly, pushing for law enforcement diversion, and getting people into services when they have. The one thing that I know for sure, and I believe that science supports this, is that the criminal justice system does not make the mentally ill better. The criminal justice system doesn't provide people an opportunity to get out of a drug addiction. We have to make sure that we do not go into a place where we start criminalizing behavior and calling a lockup facility something
And we do
other
have
than a
to
jail.
wrap, Mr. Gascon. Thank you so much. And we're going to move on to the next question. Thank you. And we're going to have more opportunities, especially to talk about mental health in the next question.
Yeah, in fact, let's stick with the subject of mental health. And Mr. Gascon, you heard DA Lacey talk about the unit that she set up in the DA's office to deal with mental health. You've said that it's not doing nearly enough on that front. You've spoken a little bit about what you've done in San Francisco. As DA of Los Angeles County, what would you do more or differently than the District Attorney's Office is currently doing?
Sure. The first thing that we have to do is that we have to make sure that our lawyers are not continually being told to oppose every diversion, right? We know that the direction that deputy district attorneys are given is not to divert. We know that when it goes out the poll, they're told not to divert. We actually know that during the first 3 months of 2019, there were only 26 people that were diverted in a county of 10.5 million people, and we know that there are 6,000 people, and that's RAND, that's not George Gascon. The RAND Corporation did a count that says 6,000 people in the jail qualify for mental health diversion. We also know that the LA District Attorney's Office actually spends more money in office supply than they do in their mental health team. So let's call it for what it is. We have 30% of the work of this office involves people that are mentally ill. And we have a unit that until recently had 1 person, and I'm told now that they have another 3 that were added, on an office that has over 1,000 lawyers serving a population of 10.5 million people. So I think that we have to unmask some of the things. I think that, some of the stuff makes for great press conferences. I think that it makes for great brochures to be put out there, but let's look at the reality. Anybody in our city can look around and see the problem because it's right in your face.
So, DA Lacey, how do you respond to that?
Well, George Gascon doesn't know what he's talking about. That's how I respond to it. And so, he does not speak from a position, he speaks from a position of ignorance. We put out the first blueprint for change, which our office drafted. George Gascon put his name on somebody else's report, and I read the report. Nowhere in there is the District Attorney of San Francisco in that report. He didn't contribute it, he copied it, he has come here and he has totally taken what I've been saying since 2013, that we need to divert people who have mental health issues out of the system. And we have done that. And the people who say that our unit isn't robust, we're going to put those numbers out. We have been putting those numbers out. You just are not attending those particular meetings. With regard to the RAND report, I read the RAND report. And you know what? You've got to have a place to divert people.
Okay,
you can't just divert them out into the street.
That's time. Let's hear from Rachel Rossi.
And just really quickly, we're asking, excuse me, please. We're asking the audience to not cheer in between questions. We're trying to keep it respectful. We want to get these candidates on the record with as many questions as possible. I really appreciate your cooperation.
So we can't deny the facts that 62 to 68% of people in our LA County jails who are suffering from mental illness have been determined to be eligible for diversion. We can't deny that fact. But what do we do about it? What do we practically do about it? I have ideas for what we should do in LA County, our district attorney's office, to start expanding access to diversion and to start turning away people suffering from mental illness at the charging stage to not even file a case, because some people suffering from mental illness shouldn't even be in the criminal justice system. So what I would do as district attorney, I would start by looking at the recommendations that are made by the district attorney as to who gets mental health diversion. You talked about ignorance. I have talked to the public defenders in the courtrooms who are consistently denied, whose clients are consistently denied mental health diversion. And there are ways to do it outside of ODR.
That's time. And so let's begin our discussion. And Mr. Gascon,
Yes.
why don't you start?
Yeah, Ms. Lacey accurately stated that nowhere in that report my name is in. That's true. I commissioned the report. I went out and I looked for experts because I am not a mental health expert. Unlike, for instance, the person that is in the LADA's office as a mental health attorney that recently during a community forum was asked what was his experience in mental health, and he said that he was a quick read. You know, we hire experts, we follow the expertise. I commissioned the report, and I will do the same kind of work if I were to become the district attorney here. I'm not about smoke and mirrors. The reality is that I have a lot of people inside the LADA's office that are telling me that they want to divert cases. They're told that they cannot. I have talked to defense lawyers. They have told me that they have cases that people are going to jail and the district attorney's office is refusing to provide a diversion program for them or providing diversion. I had a defense attorney, when I talked to him, that he says the whole idea that the LA district attorney has a mental health program is a big fraud on the public. Here's what we have. We have a prosecutor that has been, up to now, a lock-em-up prosecutor, and when the heat turned on, now she's trying to say she's a progressive.
I want to give DA Lacey a chance to jump in here.
Here's the deal. It's important to know what the different terms, and I think Ms. Rossi misspoke when she said the RAND report said they were eligible. Suitability and eligibility are different. That's a different standard. Whether you're eligible for diversion means that it's wholesale. Whether you're suitable for diversion means the determination has been made, can you safely divert? Our office has been in this space doing this work, and they have been trained in order to do this work. With regard to the defense attorneys who complained, we have a process whereby we are working on it, we are looking at it, and they are able to get their clients into mental health diversion if they can show they can be safely diverted and they have a place to go. Now, San Francisco, just look at the San Francisco Chronicle over the last year. They've been doing stories on mental health diversion, how bad it is, how they don't have places to send people, and there's been no word, no leadership on behalf of George Gascon. He did not lead on this issue. He has been at no state meetings or anything of that nature with regard to this. And the reason I know that is because I have been at state meetings. I have implemented law enforcement assistant diversion here in LA County. We have been on the forefronts before he found out how lucrative and profitable it would be if he embraced this. In his first interview, when he came out to say he was running, he said the district attorney can't get mental health care, they can't do housing. It was a statement of profound, his truth and the way he saw things. The LA County District Attorney's Office has helped to get about 3,000 people into housing diverted. We are diverting under the 1810 law. We're the first district attorney's office in the nation that has a mental health diversion unit.
I want to ask Mr. Gascon to jump in because we just have a few seconds left. And Ms. Rossi, feel free as well to jump in on this question.
You know, first of all, it's interesting that Jackie Lacey talks about the statement that I made, because that is true. And what I was saying is that district attorneys should not be criminalizing people for mental health. I don't believe that people that are mentally ill, by and large, belong within the criminal justice system, which is something that I know is a foreign concept to the LADA, and we can tell that by the way our jails look. The reality is that until a few months ago, that mental health unit had a single person. And why do we know that? Because we were Loyola Law School on a community forum, and the sole person that was in charge of that unit came up and he was asked by the moderator how many people were in his unit, and he said he was the only one. And then he was asked, what is your experience concerning mental health? And he says, I'm a quick read. But I tell you more. I have people that are working in units that are doing filing cases in the LADA. They have come to me and told me that they are not only told not to divert, but that they don't even know how the program works. Now, all of a sudden, magically, recently, we're seeing more people being put in that process, but still, there's a very small number of people given the size of the office.
Ms. Rossi, do you have anything to add on this topic?
I would just add that this new diversion program is very, very new and conveniently timed. But if you look at the history from 2010 through 2017, there was an 86% increase of mentally ill people in our LA County Jail. That is data that can't be ignored, and that shows a history of locking up people with mental health issues. And right now, the problem persists. What are we going to do about it? And I have specific ideas. Number one, we could have in the district attorney's office a policy when you get the case at the crucial stage of filing, where if someone is already under the services of the Department of Mental Health, you refer that person to the Department of Mental Health and don't file a case.
Well, we're going to have to move on to the next question because we want to get them all in here. So Libby,
And you are listening to the KPCC Los Angeles Times debate among the candidates for Los Angeles County District Attorney. The next question is for DA Lacey. Ms. Rossi says you have an archaic vision of justice. That's a quote. Mr. Gascon says, under your leadership, the DA's office has, quote, lost its ability to distinguish the dangerous from the nuisance. They both suggest the DA should be looking at ways to put fewer people in jail, especially for lesser crimes. What is your position on charging people who commit low-level, nonviolent crimes? We're going to have to settle the audience. I'm so sorry. I understand that there are really strong emotions in the House, but we're asking for folks to be respectful of the candidate's time. I hear and I recognize that you have strong feelings here. Sir, I'm so sorry. We need you guys to sit down. You're listening to 89.3 KPCC's Los Angeles DA debate. I'm Libby Dankman. Robert Green is my co-moderator. We are just taking a moment here to settle the audience because obviously this is a hugely passionate debate going on right now, and we understand that folks in the audience have strong feelings, and I thank you so much for taking the time to listen to these candidates, get them on the record with these issues. This is the first time we have seen 3 candidates on the stage in this race, and I feel very strongly that we want to move along and get to the issues. So again, DA Lacey, we're talking about putting fewer people in jail, and you're the critics who have said that you should be putting fewer people in jail. What is your position on charging people who commit low-level, non-violent crimes?
My position is that we should divert as many as possible, and that's why I started the pre-filing diversion program. It has always been that way. They have to paint our office as a bad office. They have to do this because otherwise, why are they running? The LA County District Attorney's Office values are that we seek justice in a fair and ethical manner, and we look after crime victims' rights. And so we're taught to be ethical, and we train on that, and we reinforce those values. This office protects the community by the fair and ethical pursuit. Now, let's compare that with San Francisco. Their office is a mess. People have left in droves. George Gascon, his property crime rates in that city have been abysmal. Our office does not have the issues. Our community doesn't have the issues that San Francisco has. We have true leadership. And most of the victims that we serve are people of color. And we have been on the forefront of drug courts and all of these other, quote, new ideas that these people are proposing. And we have done it in a fair and equitable manner. Now, with regard to the critics, there are always going to be critics. When I go to San Francisco, I hear plenty of critics about the San Francisco.
And that is 90 seconds, and I'm going to ask you to please allow the candidates to speak. We owe it to our audience in the studio here, in the audience, and also to our broadcast audience. Please, I am asking you to let the candidates speak. Ms. Rossi, you have 60 seconds.
What we know in LA County jails that only 33% of the people in the LA County jail are facing serious charges. So we know that we are overcharging low-level offenses. And Ms. Lacey referenced racial disparities. 80% of people in the LA County jail are black and brown. This data can't be ignored. We have to be proactive. We can't just sit back and say the justice system is racially disparate. We can't just sit back and watch it happen. We have to take active steps to reduce racial disparities. As district attorney, what I would do is commission outside audits of the data to show me what needs to be changed in my office. Where are we failing LA County? Why are all of the people locked up, the majority of people locked up, Black and Latinx? What do we need to do to fix it?
Mr. Gascon, you have 60 seconds to respond.
You know, data does matter. I understand that there's a rhetoric that is being put out there for people that are against reform, but the reality is that while we incarcerated at 1/4 of the time that LADA did, we actually got a reduction during my period of time in violent crime, while violent crime under Jackie Lacey, according to the Justice Department, went up 30% in the county and almost 50% in the city, and yet she continues to incarcerate at incredible rates. The property crime in San Francisco, 85% of it was driven by car break-ins, and interestingly enough, for a period of time, under 2% of those cases resulting in arrest. New police leadership came in 2 years ago. We started working together, and actually has been a 20% reduction in car break-ins in San Francisco, while LA has seen a problem increasing. So the whole thing about making the community safe is baloney when it comes to the work that Jackie Lacey has done.
And that's 60 seconds. I'll let DA Lacey hop in there.
So with regard to crime rates, it's not that crime rates went up by 30%, George. If you had read carefully the Cal DOJ thing, it's that the incidence of sexual assault reports went up. Once we started focusing on campus sexual assaults, more women got the courage to come forward and report rape. And that's what that is. Our crime rates have continued to remain low with regard to violent crime rates. Our property crime rates, much lower than San Francisco. San Francisco, even with that 20% reduction, still has the highest property crime rates in the nation for a small city. But let's talk about the bigger, more important issue, black and brown people. I'm a black person. I grew up in this city. And when I look at the number of people who are black and brown who are in custody, we need to look further back down the road. We need to look at income disparities. African Americans have been behind the 8 ball in terms of distribution of wealth. But by the time it comes to me, people have made bad decisions. And people have made bad decisions, which requires the prosecutor to respond.
And DA Lacey, I'm just going to pause you right there because our next question is about the effects of the DA's office on people of color. I'm just going to pause it 1 second. I'm asking folks to please let the candidates speak. We are hoping to keep this debate going because it's the only debate right now that all 3 candidates are on the stage for. So thank you so much for your cooperation. I'm going to pull in Mr. Gascon now to respond. I think that we have to acknowledge that there is a lot of passion in this audience, but what DA Lacey said to you just now about the property crime incidents in San Francisco, about what's going on in the city that you, until recently, were the DA of. What's your response to that?
Yeah, I mean, I already indicated that 85% had to do with car break-ins, and that has been reduced by 20% in the last 2 years, and it continues to go. But let's talk about sexual assaults, because I see that Ms. Lacey likes to talk about sexual assaults. How many of us remember Mr. Weinstein? Right. How many of us remember Ed Buck? Right. How many of us remember the UCLA doctor that now has probably over 100 victims that we know? You know what they all have in common? I have been talking to many of the survivors, and what they tell you is that this office has not only ignored them, but has treated them with no respect. In my office, we began a trauma-informed victim services that is a leading victim services unit in the state. I put a clinical psychologist to lead that unit. We doubled the number of people that we brought into that unit, and we doubled the number of survivors that we came in. And unlike the LA office, we have never and will never, under my leadership, put a body attachment and bring a survivor or a victim into jail to force him to cooperate. The reality is that this is an office where leadership is lacking, and I know that probably hurts you, Ms. Lacey, but that's the reality.
George, you could never hurt me. You don't have that power over me. The truth of the matter is, the reason you're bringing this up is this is your weakness. This is his weakness. In 2018, women victims testified against George Gascon and the San Francisco Police Department because they were not respected and their crimes were underreported. A year later, he did not fix the problem. He didn't fix the problem. It took Susie Loftus to come in here and come up with ideas that a prosecutor needed to work with police to solve sexual assault, something the LA County District Attorney's Office has been doing for 15, 20 years, and he should have known better because he was in LA back then. He should know that we have an amazing standard. His new report that just got put out, I looked at that. Most of the things that he put in there, we were already doing. We were already implementing. And here's the question. When you had the power, George, why didn't you implement the very reforms you are bogusly promising to do in LA County?
Mr. Gascon,
that office was a
20
mess.
seconds really quickly, and then we need to give Ms. Rossi a chance.
And you did nothing.
Actually, not only did we do that, but San Francisco District Attorney prosecuted at twice the national rate for sexual assault, unlike the LADA.
That's not true.
Everything that is
That's not
under a
true.
report that we put is things that we implemented and that we will continue to implement if I were to be elected DA. The problem here is that we're taking the mask off, and it gets very uncomfortable. We have a district attorney's office that is operating as if it was operating during the Stone Age. We have a district attorney's office that continues to do body attachments and victims of domestic violence and victims of human trafficking, and sometimes they end up in the same bus going to the county jail with their assailant, and we know that because we have talked to people that have been
I'm
there.
sorry, we're gonna have to
The
move
truth
on.
hurts.
1 second. I need Ms. Rossi to quickly give her input here, and then we're gonna move on to the next question.
I just need to very quickly bring it back to something Ms. Lacey just said about making poor decisions when talking about racial disparities. If you're black in LA, you are 13 times more likely to be arrested. And I refuse to believe that if you are black in LA, you are 13 times more likely to make bad decisions.
Okay, we're out of time for this question, but the next question is
May I
about
respond
racial
to that?
disparities in the justice system.
May I respond to that?
We're getting to that in 1 second. DA Lacey, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to move on.
So we're sticking with the subject. So Ms. Rossi, you mentioned racial disparities. It's clear that the criminal justice system arrests, locks up, prosecutes people of color disproportionately. What would you do about that in the DA's office? Could you expand on that a little bit?
The first step is for our DA to start tracking the data and publishing the data on who's being charged, what is their race, who's getting enhancements, what is their ethnicity, what is their demographic, what is their age, what is their gender. We as the public have the right to know. Once we know that data, as district attorney, I would submit that data for audits. One of the ways we could do that is similarly to how the CalGang database was recently audited, utilizing the Joint Committee of Audit. We can utilize data, we can utilize research, and we can look and see specifically where are we overcharging black people in LA County, what is leading to these high numbers, and how can we start to scale it back. I would also increase diversity of hiring in the office. There are so many things that the district attorney can do to start to scale back racial disparities. And the district attorney cannot stick her head in the sand and say that over-policing in certain communities is the problem. Because the district attorney is the gatekeeper. The district attorney can tell law enforcement, I'm not filing that case. The district attorney can sit down with law enforcement and say, I'm only getting arrest reports from this community, this black community. Let's talk about it, because I'm not filing these cases.
So let's go next to Mr. Gascon and then DA Lacey afterwards. Mr. Gascon.
There are several things that really stand out here that I think they're worth talking about. Number one, talking about reform, one of the biggest reductions in the disparate treatment of African American and Latinos in the system was the passage of Prop 47. And that's not me saying it, the numbers are out there, something that Ms. Lacey opposed. Something else that we did in San Francisco, in addition to leading with Prop 47, was we created a tool to actually use artificial intelligence to mask the race of a person before we make the first filing decision, and only after the first filing decision was made do we unmask the report to see the race of the person. We were also the only district attorney's office that actually opened up the books to have researchers and come and see our work to determine what were the areas that we can do better. Look, disparity in our system is based on racism that goes back many years, but we cannot sit and say that that is okay.
That's 60 seconds. DA Lacey, 60 seconds.
Yes.
We recognize that you have a lot of personal involvement in this issue. We recognize that you want to speak, but we are trying to get 3 candidates on the record here that have not been together on a stage in this campaign before. And I really respect where you are coming from, but I'm asking for you to sit down so that we can continue the debate. I recognize that the audience has a number of points to get across. Thank you very much. You're listening to 89.3 KPCC's DA debate among the 3 candidates for LA County District Attorney. We are here with Rachel Rossi, former public defender, DA Jackie Lacey, and George Gascon, former DA of San Francisco. Again, 89.3 KPCC, the debate among DA candidates in Los Angeles County. I thank everybody for allowing us to continue, and
let's now give District Attorney Jackie Lacey her 60 seconds.
yeah, it's a little bit difficult to hear in the hall because we have some protests happening right now. Unfortunately, some folks that have to be removed from the hall. This is an example of just years of very intense feelings in Los Angeles, and we do understand that folks have the right to voice their opinions, folks have the right to protest. But again, we're in a live broadcast, and we are trying to get to as many questions as possible for these candidates who haven't been together on the stage in any other venue. This is the largest DA office in the country. This is the busiest DA's office in the country. And these candidates deserve to have a platform, and voters deserve to listen to what they have to say on the issues. 89.3 KPCC. I'm Libby Dankman. Robert Green is alongside me. We're co-moderating this debate among the DA candidates for Los Angeles County. We are hoping that the audience allows us to continue asking questions. As soon as the audience is able to settle down a bit, we will be able to move on with our program, and that's what I am desperately hoping we're able to do soon. 89.3 KPCC and the Los Angeles Times debate. A number of folks are being removed from the auditorium here. We're at the Aratani Theater in downtown Los Angeles. And I'm sorry to see that, because as a moderator of this event, I would hope that everybody can stay and be a part of this event and be a part of what we're trying to do here, which is give the candidates a platform. We have a number of people standing. One gentleman that's leading the chanting has his arms up right now. Security in the hall is attempting to settle things down so that we can continue with our program, which I know the audience is hoping for. Again, chanting in the hall, cheering, booing, we are trying to keep it to a minimum. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us here at the KPCC DA debate and sticking with us in our broadcast audience as well. It has been a little bit of a commotion here in the hall. We know that this race is going to draw a ton of super high emotions. We understand your right to speak and to protest. And what I'm asking for you to do is understand that we have a ton of voters and a ton of people in Los Angeles that want to hear from these candidates and want to get them on the record, speaking on the issues. So please, out of respect for our studio audience, out of respect for people listening on the radio and in the hall here, thank you so much for settling down, everybody. I really appreciate it.
And I'd like to ask District Attorney Lacey to take her 60 seconds now for the radio audience.
Guys, the chanting on either side is not helping us move along in the program. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Let's keep it moving. Thank you. Please, we have to move along with this program. This is the only debate that all three candidates have appeared on this stage. I'm asking everyone to listen to what the candidates have to say.
District Attorney Lacey, the radio audience can hear you. The radio audience can hear you, so I'll ask you to take 60 seconds to respond. We were talking about the disproportionate prosecution of people of color.
Right. For as long as I've been a prosecutor, of course, this has been an issue with regard to people of color and the prosecution. I just want to respond to what Ms. Rossi said. A lot of that data is already out there. That's why you know it. So I'm not sure that the DA publishing it would necessarily solve the issue. In the DA's office, we do a lot in the way of crime prevention. We are in schools throughout Los Angeles County teaching kids. I'm the first DA ever to run that office to mandate anti-bias training. We talk about race all the time. We talk about these issues very openly. I have one of the most diverse executive staffs that we've ever seen, more women, more people of color. And you talked about hiring. We are actually making a concerted effort to recruit more people to this honorable profession. And if you look at our office, we are one of the most diverse offices in the nation. Our values are that we want to protect the community.
Oh, that's 60 seconds. Let's have our broader discussion, and I wonder, Ms. Rossi, if we could start with you on the issue.
Just to clarify, when I'm talking about data, I'm talking about who's in jail and who's in prison. I'm not talking about how many black men are charged with Estes robberies. I'm not talking about how many Latino men are charged with gang enhancements. That's the data that we don't know in LA County. That's the data that the public deserves to know.
Mr. Gascon, do you have anything to add?
Look, I think there's no question there's a lot of discretion for district attorneys, and I think there's no question that there is a national problem around racism in the criminal justice system. But the reality is that if you look at the work of the LADA, and you look at what they do with serious cases, let's look at the death penalty, for instance. 22 individuals have been sent to death row, even one after the governor put a moratorium on the use of the death penalty. And guess what color most of those folks are? Thank you. They happen to be African Americans and Latinos. That's purely a discretionary use of the DA's power, one that I know that if I were the district attorney, we would never seek the death penalty, but much less when you have such a disparate impact that is driven by the policies of this office. And I know that Ms. Lacey often talks about it's only 3% of those that qualify. Well, 3% is too many when you're talking about mostly targeting young African American. Also, she talks about the will of the people, but it's interesting enough. I don't know if she's talking about Alpine County or Tulane County, because the death penalty has failed twice in LA County. So I wonder what people is she working for, because certainly not for the people of LA.
DA Lacey, have a response to that?
Glad you brought this up. Sonia Harris was 43 years old, and she was a single mother of 3 children. Sonia Harris was stabbed 60 times in her home. Her daughter, Melinda, was stabbed 50 times. Her 11-year-old was also stabbed, and her little girl, Kayla, was smothered. With regard to that case, we sought the death penalty, not due to race, but rather because the viciousness of the crime merited it. And I must add, the jurors agreed with us. With regard to the death penalty, it should rarely be sought, and it should be done in a fair manner. And that's what the LA County's office, DA's office, believes in, and those are our values. With regard to George Gascon, he thinks you're not smart enough. He thinks you're not smart enough to look back. When he first became DA of San Francisco, he was in favor of the death penalty. He's on record as saying he would seek it with serial killers and with people who commit vicious crimes. But now that he's coming here, he is riding that wave. He is riding the wave of politics.
Mr. Gascon, do you have a response to that?
Yeah, I think Ms. Lacey is conveniently forgetting that I was a district attorney for almost 8 years, and not once did I seek the death penalty. She's also conveniently not telling you that I was the only district attorney that campaigned for Proposition 34 to end the death penalty in the state. She conveniently doesn't tell you that the death penalty is irreversible and the criminal justice system makes mistakes. She conveniently doesn't tell you that the death penalty doesn't deter crime. And she conveniently forgets to tell you that all the people that she's put on death row happen to be men of color.
This is his recent evolution.
8 years is recent?
It is recent. You were 50-something years old when you said you were in favor of the death penalty. You were 50
Okay, we will be coming back to discuss the death penalty in a moment. I want to remind our listeners that you're listening to KPCC Los Angeles Times debate among the candidates for Los Angeles County District Attorney.
Mr. Gascon, the next question goes to you. You co-authored the California ballot measure that reduced some felonies to misdemeanors, and you supported another one that made it easier to grant nonviolent prisoners early parole. Law enforcement groups up and down the state opposed these measures and argue that they have led to a spike in crime. What is your response?
Look, reform is always going to be uncomfortable for the status quo. Whether you're in the business of building private prisons, whether you're in the bail business, whether you're in the business of enlarging the size of a police agency, reform is going to be uncomfortable. The reality is that Prop 47 was the beginning of a major process of taking some of the inequities in the system, such as having possession for crack cocaine being a felony, possession of powder cocaine being a wobbler, could be a misdemeanor or a felony, when we know that who was going to jail for those felonies happened to be people of color. The reality is Prop 47 did something very specific and not what you hear often. It took possession of drugs for personal use and made it a misdemeanor across the time, right? And it took the minimum between a felony and a misdemeanor and property theft, not robberies, not burglaries, not car break-ins, and brought it up from $450 to $950. Guess what? Some of the more conservative states in the country have limits that are $2,000, $1,500, $2,500. The $450 limit is a limit that was started in the 1980s. And it was used again to go after the poor people and people of color.
Thank you. That is time. DA Lacey, your response.
With regard to Prop 47, George and I had a confidential conversation where he tried to get me to support it, and I told him I agreed with the drug charges, that with regard to draconian drug charges, they did need to be reduced, but the $950, as predicted, has spiked an increase in organized theft rings going in and out of stores and stealing. And what's happening is, especially in San Francisco, it's become a mess. It really has become a mess. The property crime has increased. The problem is they're trying to fix it in Sacramento because he didn't really think this through. It's in the details with regard to a lot of the legislation. It just wasn't thought through. My position is, as a lawyer, as a real working lawyer, which I've been all of my life, in the courtroom, I can tell the details, and I can tell from looking at something whether it's workable. George has never been in the courtroom in his entire life. He could not be hired as a grade 1.
Thank you. That is time. We're going to let Ms. Rossi respond in 1 second. For those of you just tuning in, this is the KPCC LA Times debate among the candidates for Los Angeles County District Attorney with DA Jackie Lacey and her challengers, George Gascon and Rachel Rossi. This is 89.3 KPCC Pasadena, 89.1 KUOR Redlands, 90.3 KVLA Coachella, and 89.5 KJAI Ojai. And Ms. Rossi, you have 60 seconds to respond.
Those that have opposed reform conveniently lack one thing: data and facts. When we look at the only systematic study that studied the results of Prop 47 in California, it found that it did not result in an uptick in property crime or any crime. What we know is there was a small 8% uptick in property crime in California, but guess what? There was an increase in homelessness. There was an increase in evictions. There's a lot going on. And the people that want to stand in the way of reform are trying to fearmonger, which they've done for decades, to stand in the way of reform. And when Ms. Lacey says that she thinks we should be more thoughtful about reform, well, join the conversation. Don't oppose it. Join the conversation. Tell me what we should do. How should we reform? Don't just oppose every single reform that the voters have voted for.
And DA Lacey, we're going to open it up to discussion with your response. It sounds like, Ms. Rossi is accusing you of standing in the way of reform.
I have not stood in the way. I have led reform. I'm the first DA to talk about mental health diversion. I'm the only district attorney who supported SB 10, which is bail reform. I just heard about Ms. Rossi a few months ago when she moved here to run for office. She has not been involved in the discussions that we've had here locally. Reform has to be thought through. It has to be meaningful reform, because the truth of the matter is, and I'll wait.
Folks, thank you to everyone who is trying to let the candidates speak. I understand that the feelings are very heightened in the room, and I do appreciate it. And we want folks to have a voice, but we have a limited amount of time here, and we have candidates that need to answer certain questions. We need to get them on the record here, and this is a service to voters. So please, another group of protesters is being asked to leave the crowd right now at the Aratani Theater in downtown Los Angeles, unfortunately disrupting candidates' chances to answer questions here during the KPCC Los Angeles Times debate among the DA candidates for Los Angeles District Attorney. Thank you to everyone who is helping us move along here and get some more questions. And again, Ms. DA Lacey, can you go ahead and pick up?
Right. With regard to reforms, in order to really meaningfully get reforms through, you have to be a lawyer, you have to be able to read through things, and you have to be able to analyze it. My position is I'm in favor of bail reform. I've helped get it over the goal line. We're going to start a pilot program. Mr. Gascon has said he's in favor of bail reform. However, notice the new district attorney of San Francisco implementing bail reform. So if he was already reforming bail reform, why, as a new district attorney, implementing bail reform. This is
Mr. Gascon, can you hop in there? I mean, we did just see Chesa Boudin implement bail reform.
I think, Ms. Lacey is conveniently forgetting that she was against SB 10 until she was for SB 10. Ms. Lacey has fought every single reform initiative that has come through her desk aggressively. She has fought the decriminalization of marijuana. She fought the cleaning of the record of the people until she was forced to do it. She fought Proposition 57, which basically provided an avenue to reduce the likelihood of young people, I'm talking about under 18, of being prosecutors in adult, a practice that is very common under Ms. Lacey's
and it occurred in San
leadership,
Francisco,
even
too.
though it goes contrary to all this science. Ms. Lacey, all of a sudden, is becoming progressive. But the data doesn't lie, her work doesn't lie, the community knows better than that. There is nothing progressive about Ms. Lacey. Concerning bail, in 2012, before there was any other DA talking about the need to get rid of cash bail, I was an outspoken DA talking about the need to get rid of cash bail. And we began to work with the Arnold Foundation to develop tools, and not perfect, but actually lowered not only the number of people that were being held pre-trial, but more importantly, it started to take away the use of bail. Now, Chesa, who is someone that I supported, by the way, I'm glad that Ms. Lacey talked about Chesa because, she talks about Susie Loftus coming in for all of about 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and she somehow reformed what was already done. And Chesa has taken that another step further. And he says, I'm not going to seek any money bail. And I agree with him. Because, another thing about being a human being.
Mr. Gascon,
is
I'm
being
so
thoughtful
sorry.
and evolving and learning
We're
from
going to
one
pull
another.
in Ms. Rossi here. If we can stick to Prop 47, because we will be getting to more bail discussion in just a few minutes. Ms. Rossi, your response.
So Prop 47 was a very, very good start, and we need to keep going. We need to go further. We need a district attorney who understands that the data shows that long prison terms, long felony sentences do not deter crime. We need a district attorney who will stand up to law enforcement where necessary to say, look at the data and stop fear-mongering. Look at the data. We need reform. We need it now. We currently have 80% of the people in our jails Black and brown, and we have 1 in 3 people in our jails suffering from mental illness. This status quo has to end now.
We have
We're
about 30
already
seconds,
doing
DA Lacey. Go ahead.
Yes, we're already doing it. It's as though Ms. Rossi and Mr. Gascon are living on another planet. We're already doing a lot of the reforms that you're talking about. With regard to drug courts, I was involved in those in 2008 for women, for veterans, and now for those who have a mental illness. But the truth of the matter is that we have to be able to implement reforms that are safe. With regard to our communities, the communities that in LA County are communities of color, are victims of communities of color. With Prop 47, it was implemented, but then what? We left a lot of people, especially in San Francisco, living on the street without any drug treatment programs.
And we do just
without
have
any
to
help.
wrap it right there. Thank you, DA Lacey, and we're going to move on to the next question.
So this is a question that we've already begun to discuss, but let's explore it a little further. People sent us a lot of questions on capital punishment. DA Lacey, you've come in for criticism for pursuing the death penalty, even after Governor Newsom declared a moratorium on death row executions. Critics say that it's too hard to avoid mistakes. It's applied disproportionately to people of color, and that LA County voters have voted repeatedly, as we've discussed, to do away with the death penalty, to do away with executions. What's your response to that?
My response is it's a California law that twice since I've been DA has been passed by the majority of the voters or upheld. Notwithstanding that, my office has sought the death penalty in only 2%, 2 to 3% of the eligible cases. That's less than anyone in history of that office. We do it fairly. Our committee is diverse. And basically what we're looking for is people who commit crimes like the man who killed Gabriel Fernandez, 8 years old. who was tortured, put in a box, starved to death, beaten to death. And in those cases, jurors, when we present it, and they're smart enough to know, when we present cases like that, they come back and present the death penalty. With regard to the cases that we have sought, I have personally reviewed all of them, and with regard to the death penalty, there are automatic appeals. There are a lot of things that are in place to protect people from being wrongfully convicted. And notwithstanding that, our office has a conviction review unit so that if somebody is on death row and they feel they didn't do it, they can appeal to it. Since we've been in operation, we have not had one single person on death row appeal to the conviction review unit. My position is I'm a constitutional officer. I have to follow the will of the voters, notwithstanding what the governor says.
Ms. Rossi, could you take 60 seconds to respond?
Ms. Lacey often says that, well, the death penalty is the law, I have to enforce it. She just told us today, I don't enforce the law of urinating in public. What you're forgetting here is that the district attorney has incredible discretion. That is by design. The district attorney has the discretion to decide that the death penalty is disproportionately affecting people of color in our state, that is disproportionately affecting people of color in LA County, that there's a moratorium, and that the LA County voters have said we don't want it. The district attorney has to consider those facts in utilizing the discretion that is given to her office to decide to stop seeking the death penalty.
Mr. Gascon.
Look, I think when it comes to the death penalty, I think that most people understand that it has been debunked. And the fact that Ms. Lacey continues to insist that she's following the will of the voters again, it must be Alpine County, Tulane County, it's not LA County. But the reality is that when you look at the disparate application by this office, when you look at the number of people that have been put on death row, even after the moratorium, when you talk about conviction review, and you have someone that in 2012, the detectives came directly to Ms. Lacey and said, you have an innocent man. And that man remained in jail until recently, now that she's under heat. And now she brings this out, and she has a moment of emotion, how she's releasing a man that had been in prison for 7 years unnecessarily after she had been told that this was an innocent man.
San Francisco has no conviction review unit.
It is a farce, and the public knows this.
DA Lacey, please.
Right. I would respond that San Francisco has no conviction review unit. George Gascon didn't see fit to even create one of those, which is a modern-day progressive prosecutor. You would have expected him to do that. But with regard to the seeking of death penalty in our county, it is a state law. It's not a county law, George. It is a state law, and so it's the state voters that vote on this. The voters decide to do away with it, that's fine. But I don't think, as district attorney, you ought to come in and thwart the will of the voters in particular counties because you don't agree with a law. With regard to it, once again, I said, with death penalty, I'm never going to, people either for it or against it, and so that's not my role to persuade you, but the important thing is to apply it in a fair manner and do it without regard to race. The report that came out is simply not complete, not accurate, and in this county, we do it in a fair manner. As a matter of fact, when I met with the ACLU, they told me we had one of the best processes in the country. They didn't agree with us, but they told us that they couldn't find anything wrong with the way that we are doing it, that we're not factoring in race, that we're looking at facts, that we're looking at the impact on victims, such as Sonia that I started to talk about before. She's 42 years old. Her and her 3 children were murdered. Then the man set their house on fire after doing that. Once he was captured, they discovered that he murdered a 90-year-old woman and set her house on fire. When will we start to talk about the victims of violent crime?
So I want to ask Ms. Rossi to jump in if you've got anything additional to add.
I didn't
on the
hear
issue.
the last thing that you said. Sorry. What was the last thing that you said?
When will we start to talk about the victims of violent crime?
I do think we need to talk about victims, because in our district attorney's office, we still have a practice of locking up victims to coerce them to testify. As district attorney, I would place more focus on listening to the community, listening to victims, and putting victims first, not just pursuing a conviction at all costs and disregarding the will of victims.
So, DA Lacey, the assertion is that people are locked up to coerce them to testify. Could you address that?
Yeah, that rarely happens. It rarely happens. That assertion is incorrect. On
I've heard
certain
it from DAs
cases,
in the office who said
on
that
certain
happens.
cases, when a victim's life is at stake and she or he won't testify against someone who has battered them, someone who's human trafficked, we seek one through the court. But that's actually a misconception on the part of Ms. Rossi's part. When is Ms. Rossi, though, going to talk about what she has done for victims? When is George Gascon? Look, with regard to criminal justice reform, I have dedicated my life to protecting victims. These folks over here are advocating for the incarcerated. Neither one is wrong. But unless you exclude the other, when will we hear them say what they've done for victims? I've been in the district attorney's office all of my life serving the victims of LA County. And the truth of the matter is that most of the homicide victims in LA County are African American men.
All right.
Most of the victims are
We'll have to
people
cut
of
it off there. We'll have to cut it off there. And I want to move on to Libby for the next question.
We're going to get to a lot of the issues that are being raised right now in the audience, so I'm hoping that we can just keep moving along and keep asking these questions. Ms. Rossi, there is a new state law. We've been talking about bail reform somewhat with the other questions, but this is really focused on that issue now. The state law would do away with cash bail in most instances, although it is on hold until we vote on a November ballot measure that would rescind it. If voters decide to kill that law, the bail reform law, what would be your policy towards cash bail within the DA's office?
I'd like to start by saying that both of the prosecutors on this stage had 8 years to abolish cash bail in their offices and did not. I'm the only person on this stage who has not sought cash bail. We need to abolish cash bail. So SB 10 is a good start because it abolishes cash bail, but it puts in place a risk assessment system that is controversial. If SB 10 goes away, we need to abolish cash bail, and we need to draft a release policy that is extremely expansive. And I also want to say public defenders fight for victims because all my clients were victims. You can't divide a line between victims and defendants because defendants are victims and victims are defendants.
Mr. Gascon, you have 60 seconds to respond. What would you do in terms of cash bail if you were Los Angeles County DA?
Yeah. First of all, let's talk about the victims, right? Because I hear the conversation about victims, right? But no one did what SFDA did by bringing a clinical psychologist to lead that unit, double the size of the unit, and double the size of services, and put actually victim services advisors around the community. Because sometimes the victims of today are simply people that have been traumatized and they may offend again. And I agree with Ms. Rossi that sometimes the people that she deals with are also victims. The reality that when it comes to cash bail, I have said it over and over again, that cash bail must go. I work towards the reduction of the use of cash bail, and I will continue to work towards the elimination of cash bail and looking for alternatives to cash bail. There is no connection between individual wealth and dangerousness, and this is an office that has lost completely the ability to distinguish between one and the other.
And thank you. That is time. DA Lacey, 60 seconds.
So we're getting to the real reason why Ms. Rossi is running. She has dedicated her life to being a public defender, where the focus has been on protecting her client. I've dedicated my career to protecting victims. Having somebody take over the DA's office who's never been a prosecutor and has always been a public defender would be irresponsible. She is not, if she wanted to be a prosecutor, then why take the top job, at least come in and do the work first? She is not qualified to run the largest office in the nation. That's a very ambitious goal. Let's talk about Mr. Gascon. There's a case called Humphreys, People versus Humphreys, and it's San Francisco that was involved in it. He had a risk assessment tool that said that Mr. Humphreys shouldn't be released. And he fought the release of this man and lost it in court. So that's what I mean when I said he talks out of both sides of his mouth.
And that is time. I'm going to let Ms. Rossi respond because DA Lacey has called you unqualified for the DA's office.
I am running for district attorney precisely because I'm a former public defender. There's a movement across this country of public defenders running for prosecutor. And why? Because I genuinely believe that Jackie Lacey believes she is doing the right thing. Because she has been in this office her entire career. This is all she's seen. The racial disparities are normal. This is all she knows, and I am coming at it from a completely different perspective because that is how we get reform.
DA Lacey, Ms. Rossi saying that the fresh perspective that she brings is necessary to implement reforms.
I couldn't disagree more. I think it comes from a position of wanting to be a spokesperson. This is not a spokesperson job. This is a job for a real lawyer who understands in their heart and soul what a prosecutor is about. This is not a job. This is not a job where you learn. This is not an entry-level job. And Ms. Rossi is trying to get payback for what has happened to her clients. She has not been a prosecutor. And really, Mr. Gascon has not been a litigator. This is the largest office in the country, was responsible for 170,000 cases a year. And we need a prosecutor who believes in victims, who protects the community, and who does the right thing even when people are yelling and screaming at them. You have to have courage to have this job.
And I just want to reiterate, these other candidates up here, they want a chance to respond to DA Lacey. So I appreciate it that folks are allowing the candidates to speak. Mr. Gascon, can you respond? I mean, DA Lacey with some strong words for you and Ms. Rossi.
I'm glad that Ms. Lacey is talking about her management skills because she's leading an office where rampant sexual harassment is going on, and we continue to have settlements where people are asked to sign non-disclosure agreements, and the women that are being victimized are a stereotype, and they're put in a corner. It is true that she's running the largest prosecution office. It's also true that it's an office that is so poorly managed that two people that are equally situated, depending on which courthouse you go to, the offer will be distinctively different. You could go to Pomona and be offered a prison term, and go to another courthouse and be offered diversion. The lack of leadership in this office is so rampant. There are so many areas, not only in the way that they prosecute cases and the leadership and the disconnect between the messages that Ms. Lacey provides to the public and what actually happens, whether you're talking about mental health, whether you're talking about reform. A person has innately opposed every single reform. You cannot be a reformer if you do not believe in reform.
Okay, we're going to wrap it right now because we have to move on to the next question, and I appreciate it, Mr. Gascon. We do have a couple more questions left, and we want to get to those.
And Mr. Gascon, this question is for you. When you were district attorney in San Francisco, you charged defendants with gang enhancements. Now, a spokesman said that you only did this in the most serious situations. You're saying now, as district attorney of Los Angeles County, you would not charge gang enhancements. Why not? Why did you change your position?
Thank you. So one of the things that I believe in data and I believe in science. When I left the SFDA, there were 16 ongoing research projects, and that's just a sign of the work that we did. Around 2014, I began to get very uncomfortable with the use of enhancements, and we worked with Stanford to get to doing analysis of the impact of enhancements in our work. I was hoping to do it for the entire state, but guess what? All the other DAs refused to provide data, so we opened up our books, and when we finished looking at the whole process, one of the things that became very obvious to me is that incarceration levels are driven by status enhancements, including gang enhancements. And I came to the conclusion that we needed to stop using them. Interestingly enough, we have just seen more evidence of why enhancements have to go away. Just recently, the LA Times covered the story about the LAPD officers that were falsifying gang data and putting young people of color into the gang files without thinking about the consequences that would have for the young people. And I called on Ms. Lacey very quickly, not only to stop the use, but to make sure that she set up her conviction review unit to review the work of all these officers and other officers.
DA Lacey, what about gang enhancements?
You know, with gang enhancements, they should be carefully used. And in the past, it has been abused in the sense that affiliates and folks who knew gang members were falsely identified. And obviously the FI card scandal for LAPD that involved the officers involved, we are reviewing that, so I'm not able to talk about that publicly. But what I want to tell you is the following. We do file gang enhancements on cases where we believe we have strong evidence that something was done for the benefit of the gang. In LA County, we have an issue with gang violence. 53% of the homicides committed in LA involved gangs. But I want to talk about, once again, the hypocrisy of the San Francisco DA. He charged it in 451 cases, and he says he was doing this sunny in 2014. So why didn't he just stop? Why in Mesa, Arizona, in 2008, did he tout that they arrested 71 gang members in Mesa, Arizona as a way to address gang crime?
Okay,
He's coming here with a different tune to try to pander to people and get him to vote for him. This guy, you look at his facts. Look at his facts.
District Attorney Lacey, that's time. I want to ask Ms. Rossi to address this question, and then Mr. Gascon will come back to you after that. Ms. Rossi first.
I have to say, when I saw this report come out about the FI scandal, I actually wasn't surprised because I saw it every day as a public defender. I saw it with all the majority of my cases. The way that you get labeled a gang member is an officer takes out a card, sees you in the street, says, oh, you're wearing baggy clothes, I see a red hat, you're friends with such and such, I think he might be a gang member, I'm calling you a gang member today, puts that in a file, and then we label people. The average age of a gang member in LA County is 15 years old. Who are we labeling? And 90% of them are black and brown. We need to do away with the gang enhancements. And when we talk about this fear-mongering of the gang violent crime, well, if someone commits a murder, you can still charge them with murder. You don't need gang enhancements to take small-level offenses and ratchet up penalties against mostly black and brown people.
Mr. Gascon, back to you. Mr. Gascon, on gang enhancements.
Yeah, I mean, as I indicated before, we did use them. I came to the conclusion that they should not be used. That conclusion has not only been reinforced by the research that we did, but more recently by the evidence of the work that we have seen coming out of the LAPD. And that's why I have spoken against it before that scandal, but more forcefully today. Ms. Rossi is absolutely right. If somebody commits murder, they can go and be tried for murder. You don't have to continue to pile on status enhancements that often are the product of discriminatory police work for years. Don't be fooled. Most of the status enhancements are the result of discriminatory police work for many years.
DA Lacey?
With regard to gangs, when the first year I was a prosecutor, my father painted over graffiti in his front yard on a telephone box, and a week later, somebody drove by and shot him. He lived, but the gang enhancement has the effect of trying to get punishment for people who engage in street enterprise, in gang enterprise. It has been an effective tool. Communities are under siege by gang crimes. Many innocent people have been shot by stray bullets involving gangs. It ought to be used in a fair manner. We ought to have evidence, not just an FI card. There ought to be testimony. It ought to be tested, and it is tested very vigorously in our courts. With regard to the gang enhancement, though, we have a gang issue, a gang problem here in LA County. And with regard to these folks, if you put them in, they're basically saying they're going to back away from it, which will be dangerous for innocent victims out there who need to be protected.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's now move on to what is likely the final question.
We have one more question, and it's something I know we got a lot from the audience, and we're getting it from the audience in the theater tonight. This question is for DA Lacey. You've taken a lot of heat for only prosecuting one law enforcement officer for an on-duty shooting, and in one case for overriding the recommendation of the chief of the LAPD, who said you should prosecute an officer for shooting an unarmed homeless man. What's your response to these criticisms?
My response is, throughout the country, there have only been 2 cases filed throughout the country against law enforcement officers. These cases are very, very difficult to prove. With regard to the case here in LA County with the LAPD, the police chief came out in an extraordinary move after for 9 years watching several police shootings and decided to issue a letter and then leak it to the press. My position is, look, I have to look at the evidence in that case, and I did carefully look at the evidence, including the independent witnesses in that case. And I concluded that there was a reasonable belief that the officer had to use force. It is heartbreaking to hear from the victims of people who have been shot by the police. I have met with victims. Mr. Gascon has faced this same group, the same type of group in San Francisco. His protesters show up every Friday. He faced criticism over the Mario Woods case. Remember, that was the case where Colin Kaepernick took a knee over that case. And so we both have taken heat over that case. But the important thing is not to politicize those cases and file them for the right reasons, because the evidence is there.
Thank you, DA Lacey. You are listening to the KPCC Los Angeles Times debate among the candidates for Los Angeles County District Attorney. And we have our next response will be from Rachel Rossi, who has 60 seconds.
We need a justice system that finally works for all. And one of the things that I would do as district attorney is start from day one by exploring the use of independent prosecutors whenever law enforcement use of force results in death. What we have is a conflict of interest because law enforcement works closely with the district attorney. And the district attorney is then called on to prosecute someone that they depend on for their cases. That conflict of interest has to be done away with. There are things that we need to fight for long term. We need to make the laws better, yes. We need an independent prosecutorial office, yes. But I'm saying, what can we do now? I'm saying, let's be creative, let's be innovative, let's hold our community responsible equally now, today.
Mr. Gascon, you have 60 seconds.
Yeah, beginning with the case on the Venice Boardwalk, which I'm familiar with, I would have prosecuted that case. I think that was a case, if there was ever a case under the current law that could be prosecuted, that was one of them. But here's the distinction between Jackie Lacey and myself. There is no question that the current law is a problem. But I have been the only district attorney in the state that have been public in supporting Dr. Weber's bill 2 years ago to ensure that the force that the police officers use on duty has to be the minimum necessary force, and that they have to evaluate other alternatives. Ms. Lacey has been against that, as every other DA. The distinction here is that you have a district attorney that is comfortable looking the other way, and she was just given a million reasons to continue to look the other way by the LAPPL. That's what we have here, and that's what we as a public and as a community have to look at.
Opening that up to DA Lacey, Mr. Gascon saying that you've looked the other way.
It's simply not true, and it's hypocritical of him. You could say that same thing about the decision in Mario Wood's case and the Longario Pat case. People are saying the same thing about him. I'm wondering why these protesters aren't talking about to your San Francisco counterparts about the issues they had with George Gascon's administration. He didn't file on anybody. He didn't have the courage to. People can talk trash, but what they will do when the pressure is on is different. What we try to do what we do in the LA County District Attorney's Office is we looked at the evidence. We look at the evidence and we apply the law and facts fairly. And I believe in his heart of heart that's what he did. But he's taking that heat, and now he's coming over here saying, okay, I'll do something different. The Weber bill, I did in fact support it at the end when they changed one small thing, because I don't believe in prosecuting people because they made a mistake. And so once the language was changed,
the language that you're talking
it.
about there was a
Right.
recent change in the expectation for the use of force
Right.
for law
Exactly.
enforcement officers from reasonable to necessary.
That's correct. That's correct.
So I want to get Rachel Rossi in here because we heard DA Lacey earlier say you don't want to prosecute, especially a law enforcement officer, for political reasons. What would you do differently as DA than what both of these candidates next to you on the stage have done running their own district attorney's offices?
I think I'm the only person who has a tangible idea of what we need to do today and now. I think we can start by getting rid of that inherent bias and conflict of interest by exploring the use of independent prosecutors. My question to my esteemed colleagues on the stage is, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? Are you going to continue with not prosecuting law enforcement? Are you going to voice an idea, a plan on how we can move forward now? And I have to say I'm concerned that Jackie Lacey was opposed to the bill when it was previously drafted and supported it when it was watered down, because now what we have is a law enforcement use of force that it is only permissible when it's necessary. And we need a prosecutor who is going to argue what necessary means. We need a prosecutor who's going to argue for an expansive definition of what necessary means. And these statements today make me have a strong belief that Ms. Lacey is going to argue that necessary means the same thing as reasonable.
Mr. Gascon, can you hop in here because you also did not prosecute any law enforcement
Right.
officers while you were district attorney in San Francisco?
Well, we prosecuted over 30 officers, but it's true that not one for a shooting. Again, unlike in the case of Ms. Lacey, where you had a chief of police that presented you clear evidence of a case that was prosecutable, and she took 2 years to come up with a bogus answer as to why that case wasn't prosecuted. But the reality is, again, that we do need to create independence in how these cases are investigated. I was the only district attorney that, with the current law and with the current resources, created an independent investigation bureau that was actually staffed by civil rights lawyers and actually some defense lawyers to look at police use of force. I was also the only district attorney that supported the first version of Dr. Weber's bill, because that was not a watered down, because it's not only necessary, it has to be the minimum force, right? Because I agree with Ms. Rossi that now the issue of necessary is going to be argued, and it could become again the same thing as reasonable. So we do need to look for other ways. We need to create legislation to do the work. We do have to separate district attorney's office from looking at these cases. These cases do need to go independently. The tools for that need to be created. In the meantime, you have to create some buffers. Perhaps creating a special prosecutor is the answer, I'm not sure. But the reality is that let's look at the facts. We have an office in the LADA that has been comfortable with business as usual and will continue to be if Ms. Lacey gets another 4 years.
I'm going to allow 30 more seconds, Ms. Lacey, and that's got to be the final word. We are way over time, so 30 more seconds to DA Lacey.
Right. So with regard to Ms. Rossi's argument of the independent prosecution, so you know, with the Woods case and Longoria Pat case, Mr. Gascon did get an independent group to look at it, and they still didn't file in those 2 cases. They still didn't file. I would say that the LA County District Attorney's Office is independent. We have filed on more than 200 officers for violating the law. So we are not afraid to take on cases that involve officers.
And I'm going to have to cut it off there. I'm so sorry we're out of time for this evening, and I thank the candidates. I thank the audience who has been here for our Los Angeles County DA debate. Jackie Lacey, District Attorney of Los Angeles, George Gascon, and Rachel Rossi, thank you so much for joining us. And on behalf of myself and my co-moderator, Robert Green, I'm Libby Dankman. Thank you, everyone who came out tonight, everyone who listened in our broadcast audience or watched online. And we want to thank everyone at the Los Angeles Times and KPCC who worked so hard behind the scenes to pull this event together. Big thank you to the staff of the Aratani Theater for hosting us. And mail-in ballots go out on Tuesday, everybody. I know a lot of heightened passions in the room here, and there will be folks voting in this race and many others. Thanks again, everyone, for coming out. I'm Libby Dankman. You're listening to 89.3 KPCC.